Next, we have Amy Chavez, who's running for County Board 5. And just so everybody knows, I did invite every candidate in the county. Mary Jo didn't decide to come.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Chavez, and my husband and I, and our two twins, I've got boy-girl twins as well, must run in this race. We live in Naperville. And I got involved with the county board a few years ago when we were starting to have problems with our elections equipment, which Diane briefly mentioned tonight. And I started showing up to county meetings. And then we had a candidate that was drawn out of the district after the primary, and I started attending a few more meetings, just as a concerned citizen to figure out what's going on. And what I realized is that we've really got to, what happens a lot on county board is this big budget. They have a $480 million budget, and we have to really dig deep into those numbers. That's what I did in my past. I worked for Lucent Technologies. I was the liaison between the engineers that were actually here in Warrenville and the Salt Lake City Olympic Committee. And we built out the entire plan for telecommunications for all the venues for the Salt Lake City Olympics. Every part of that plan hit my desk. So I knew how to dig deep into these budgets, how to make the numbers work, how to stay within budget, how to ask departments, what would you do with 10% more? What would you do with 10% less? Our budget at the county board has not been properly workshopped. It gets passed year after year. And yes, there's a 500+ document on the website right now, but we don't know what those numbers really mean. We need to dig deep. We need to workshop those numbers. I've also worked in healthcare. I worked for Allergan, and my job was to get medications to our most needy patients. It was my job to make sure that veterans were getting access to the medications that they needed. So often doctors will prescribe to their patients the medication they think that patient can afford, and it was my job to make sure that we were getting those patients not only the one they could afford, but the best and most efficacious med. That's what I want to encourage our DuPage County Health to do as a member of the board as well. I'm also the founder of co-founder, I should say, of We Are One Naperville, which is a great program. It's 1,100 members strong that promotes diversity within our community. I've got a heart for gun violence. My dad was actually a survivor of gun violence. I have a huge passion for us finding a way to limit gun violence in our society. And I believe that's something that we can do on the county board because we have judicial, we have the sheriff, we have the health department. We need to bring all three of those units together and figure out how we can study this issue and how we can make an impact here in DuPage. So I would love to have your vote. My website is Amy Chavez 2020. You can find me on Facebook as well. And so I hope you'll connect with me on Facebook. I'm also super available. My cell phone is out there. If anyone ever wants to just meet for coffee, that's the kind of connection I want to make with the people in my district. So give me a call and let's meet for coffee.
And next, we have Bruce Fogarty, who's running for county auditor.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a question. How many people in this room think it would be a good thing to have a Democrat in an oversight position for DuPage County? Amen. We're in agreement then. Well, I'm pretty sure I knew the answer before I asked it. The second question I'm going to ask you is, to do an effective job as an auditor, do you think the person should have a lot of experience and a lot of credentials in a number of industries, in a number of roles across 5 businesses and 3 industries? Do you think that would be a good thing? I'm your guy then. I have spent the last 25 years doing every imaginable type of accounting. I was an internal auditor with the IRS for a year, worst year of my life. I have taught accounting classes at 4 different schools for a period of 6 years to both graduate and undergraduate classes. There's really no question I can do this job. One of the reasons I decided to run is not only can I do this job, but our current county auditor is not doing his. I was at a candidate forum last night, and one of the sons of one of the Republican candidates who happens to work at the county, and if you were there last night, you're pretty sure you know who I'm talking about, said, Bruce, your name is floating around Republican circles, and I'm a Republican, and I would glad to have you work for the county auditor. Bob Krogan does nothing. So I ask you to consider voting for me in the primary. I can do this job. If I get past March 17th, if I win in the primary, anyone who knows me knows that I work very hard in the precincts. There are people in this room who canvass with me on a regular basis that can attest to that. I can walk anyone in this room in the ground. The only way you win elections is by working the precincts. Facebook isn't going to do it. Going to meetings with largely the same crowd alone isn't going to do it. You have to be in the precincts. So if you're a PC, please work your precinct. If you want to canvass a neighborhood, grab a candidate that tickles your fancy. There's a lot of them here tonight. Well, maybe 2 of us. Help the candidates. We have an orange monster in the White House. We have to have that guy go away. We can also have competitive government in DuPage County. I think I'm part of that solution. I hope you can support me on March 17th. My name is Bruce Fogarty. I'm running for DuPage County Auditor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And just so everybody knows, Indivisible DuPage as an organization is not taking any or making any endorsements, except for Marie Newman, running for the Illinois Congressional 3rd. And we have postcard packets in the back that we'll be giving out if anybody wants to help with finding a new congressperson other than Dan Lipinski. Next we have Moon Khan, who is running for clerk of the circuit court.
Thank you very much. Friends, you have heard me so many times, but every time when I speak, you might have noticed that I don't have any memorized script. I try to interact with the people who are here so they can enjoy. You see, I believe there may be so many attributes which a voter would like to have in a candidate. But I believe there should be 3, 4, or 5 main attributes. One, whether that person is capable, competent, experienced, highly experienced. I have 2 master's degrees, MA, MBA, then in IT. I have worked for 20 years in IT. I have worked 20 years in government, in Cook County, in DuPage County Housing Authority, DuPage County Health Department. I am the person who worked in 3 countries in management. I believe that's more than enough for the Circuit Court Clerk's office, which is a non-judicial office, which has nothing to do with a legal degree. The second most important should be whether this person takes the agenda of the Democratic Party and run with the agenda and platform. Moon Khan ran in 2016, brought in 170,000 votes. I organized an organization, Apna, and I recruited 30 people to run for municipal elections in 2017. In 2018, I helped out almost all the candidates who were running, and they won. I was there. And in 2019, again, I helped people to run in municipal elections. And now here it is 2020. In all those years, who was there carrying the torch of Democratic Party? It was Moon Khan, not my opponent. This is very important. The last thing which I would like to highlight, who can win this race? My opponent is first time running for this county-wide position and also running for the PC. I have been PC, I have been doing all these things over the years. Now, Republicans have started accusing me and they are trolling my Facebook and they are saying, we need American leaders. Friends, how long I have to prove that I am an American? And what's the definition of American? When I have been walking, talking, running, jogging for the Democratic Party, don't you think it is the time for me that all of us were talking about undocumented people, all kinds of things. This is the guy who was not born here. I came here on my own. I am the Columbus of my family. And I went and I completed everything. For more information, go to moonkhan.com. I am your guy who can defeat that 16-year incumbent. Believe me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And all of their websites are linked to our website, so if anybody's not sure of where to find everybody. And the next person is Candace Adams, that's running for clerk of the circuit court.
Hi everyone, my name is Candace Adams and I'm running for clerk of the circuit court, like Diane said. A little bit about me and a little bit about this position. So I'm a practicing attorney. I work for a firm in downtown Chicago. I manage a department that oversees attorneys and other staff members and includes an investigative team as well. Before becoming an attorney, I also have extensive management experience overseeing teams larger than 100 and budgets larger than the clerk's office that we have in DuPage County. A little bit about this office and what it does, right? So this is the office that houses all the records for the clerk or the courts. So whenever you do a filing, this is where it gets filed through. It's also a department where you go and you pay some tickets. It's a revenue generator, a large revenue generator behind sales and property tax here in DuPage County. So why I think my qualifications make me the person for this job. I've managed budgets that are as large as the clerk's office. So right now we have a budget of about $7 to $8 million in that. I've managed teams that are larger than 100 people in my previous employment, and I'm currently managing a large team now. Also revenue generating, we're generating about $17 million now, and I'm working and managing a department that generates revenue as well. I have different ideas that I think will help our community members and generate revenue at the same time. So one of the things that I'd really like to do is I'd like to bring community outreach programs that are happening in counties around us that are not currently happening here in DuPage County. If you look at Cook County, for example, they're doing expungement summits and amnesty days, things that really clear a pathway for jobs, a pathway to military entrance, a pathway to military rank. That's not currently happening here in DuPage County, and I want to do that. With amnesty days, what happens is all the fines in excess of the original fine are waived, and people are more likely when they show up to pay those original fines, generating more revenue for the county. About what my opponent said about being a Democrat. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I've not lived in DuPage my whole life, but I've been a Democrat my whole life. I was very fortunate to grow up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, where the school that I went to is 70% African American, 30% white, so I was the minority there. Recently, my opponent said that because 3 women were elected to DuPage County, that's enough women.
This is wrong.
That is not wrong.
This is
No,
wrong.
he said this is wrong.
Huh? I know he said it's wrong, that's not wrong.
It is wrong.
Anyway.
Right. And he said that in context of electing him because three white women had already been elected. For me, growing up, I've never felt as part of a class that was overrepresented. If you look at the legal field and my community, in politics, in the law, I've always worked very hard to support women and to support or to decrease the disparity between men and women. My time is up. So I just wanted to say that I've always been a Democrat. I'm very excited about this position, and I think I'd do a very good job doing it. Thank you.
And we're gonna not have questions right now because we're gonna respect all of our candidates' time and whatnot. So frankly, we're a little bit ahead of schedule because there was some people that are missing. And if we have any extra, one of the things that we're doing is Indivisible DuPage has a podcast. And I'm actually back to filming again. You'll see a bunch that are going to be released. So if any of the candidates didn't schedule a time, please schedule a time with me. But we're going to take a 2-minute break. to get ready for the judicial forum. So we're gonna just take a 2-minute. So we're going to begin, and just so everybody realizes, and I'm about to recuse myself, because one of the other things that I do is I'm a political consultant. And so there's a few candidates that I work for, and I don't want to be seen as swaying anything, because that's not what we do here. We believe in a completely open conversation without any endorsements at all. So any which way, Lynn is our vice chair, and so she's going to be running the forum.
Thank you, Diane. I'm a nurse too, I could have helped you. We should have the candidates come sit down up here. So I will introduce you. We have David Stevens, Azam Nuzamadi, Jill Adi, and who else is here? Oh, Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. Oh, thanks, the cheat sheet.
Because you're so short.
Yes, I know. You're way up there. But I think that's it. I don't think Alice is here, and I don't think Peggy's here. Okay, all right, very good.
And timing, if you remind them of the timing.
How much time do you need? Oh, a minute and a half? Okay. All right, so we're going to start out with introductions. Each candidate gets a minute and a half, and we have a lovely time person right here, and that will be Erica. So I know order of preference, but I'm just going to start going down the line. So we'll start with David Stevens. There you are.
Hello, thank you for coming. I'm David Guy Stevens. I'm running for DuPage County Circuit Court Judge. I believe that my background and experiences uniquely qualify me for this job. I first ran for judge in 2018. I had a primary opponent. I had two primary opponents, one being Jeff, and he beat me by 200 votes out of over 65,000. So that was less than 1/2%. So it was a good showing. I've learned since then. I think that got my name out. But I want to talk about my qualifications. I'm both a former assistant state's attorney as well as a former assistant public defender. And what that means is I've seen the law from all different angles. I've been trained to come at the law from different viewpoints, which I think will be helpful when you're a judge. It also gave me extensive courtroom and trial experience. 30 seconds, okay. So now I have my own practice. We do criminal, civil, personal injury, and family law. So not only have I seen the law from both sides, but I have practiced multiple areas of law. When I'm not an attorney, I am very involved with the community. I do pro bono service work for victims of violence. I'm a former school teacher, so I have gravitated towards mentoring programs. I mentor young attorneys, aspiring paralegals, and at-risk high school students. I'm asking for your vote. I'm David Guy Stevens. Thank you.
That was wonderful.
So then I get a minute and a half?
A minute and a half.
All right.
And she's in charge.
Yeah. See how much I can get out in a minute and a half. I'm Jill Adi. I am a Democratic candidate for Circuit Court Judge in the Souter vacancy. I do have a primary opponent. She is not here tonight. I'm going to briefly tell you about myself because a lot of you are familiar, but some of your faces are new. I have tried hundreds of cases. I've been an attorney for 25 years. I have been a criminal prosecutor as well as a civil defense attorney. And something I'd like to spend the last little minute of my time talking about is, as you're considering your judicial candidates, I urge you to look at their temperament and their interpersonal skills. And those are things that don't come naturally to some people. They do come to me, I believe. And that's something that in my current job at the Attorney General's office, those are things that come into play daily. I supervise 16 attorneys, and part of what we do is evaluate the facts and apply the case law and decide what we think should be the proper outcome in the case. And my attorneys run into routine difficulties that I also have to help them wade through how to handle. And so, for example, I had an attorney that was called a snot in court just a couple of months ago. And so that was a conversation that we had to have. Well, how was she going to continue to work with this opposing counsel when communication had clearly broken down? So again, I just wanted to highlight, consider temperament and interpersonal skills. Jill for Judge, my website is live if you would like some information or additional information. You can find it there. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Azam Nizamuddin. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge. This is for the Patrick O'Shea seat. I'm an attorney of 20 years. I have worked for a large law firm doing business and commercial litigation, as well as a small firm doing tort, we call it tort litigation. I have my own practice as well. I've done both criminal and civil. Recently, the DuPage County Bar Association Evaluation Committee for Judges came out with their rankings, and I was deemed highly recommended. And this is a membership that represents 2,500 attorneys in the DuPage area. Also, the Illinois State Bar Association Judiciary poll came out, and I was also recommended by them. Aside from my legal background, I have been a very active Democrat for many, many years. I was co-chair of Linda Davenport's successful campaign in 2018. I'm the former chair of the Bloomingdale Township Democratic Organization as well. And I even canvassed for Obama back in 2008 and 2012. I believe this year is a year of change, particularly for the judiciary. And I think it's really important that all of our candidates on the Democratic side win. And if we win, it's not enough to simply win and then sit and do what the previous judiciary in DuPage has done. We have to demand change, and we can only do that if we have a track record of standing up against injustice and standing up for those who need the most help in society, particularly those who have less money, those who have been marginalized in our communities. And that's why I'm running, and that's why I asked you for your vote. Thank you very much.
So I'm Jeffrey Jacobson, running for judge. I'm unopposed in the primary. Couple things, if you like what you hear, on March 7th and March 14th, we're going to be in parades. We'd love as many people to join to show how many Democrats there are in DuPage. So you can go to my website, jeffjacobsonforjudge.com. A little about me, I've been practicing law for almost 30 years. I live in Downers Grove with my 4 kids and wife. I'm on the Liquor Commission. We hear cases and we make rulings on violations and whether someone should get a liquor license. I was also an administrative law judge in Illinois for hearing about 10,000 cases that affected employees and companies. Very active out here. I'm on the executive board for INSA Court, which is an invitation only for judges and attorneys. I was the assistant treasurer for the DuPage Bar Association. And I can go on, there's a lot. If you want to go to my website, you can find out a lot about me. Once again, if you can help, that would be great, and help all the candidates. Thanks.
And then, Alice, we anticipated starting at 8 o'clock, so I'm sure she has another engagement, so.
Hello, sorry, I went to Martin McMenamin's fundraiser. My name is Alice Wilson, and I am also running for judge in DuPage County. A little bit about myself. I've been a lawyer for 29 years, practicing in criminal, divorce, and family law. I've also been an administrative law judge, whereby I heard city ordinance violations in the city of Chicago, and I've also served as an arbitrator. And in those cases, I heard personal injury and contract cases. I love being a lawyer because I love helping people. Helping people is one of my passions. To help people, most people don't get that opportunity, but I've been blessed to have that opportunity as a lawyer. So I'm really, really proud of that. And I think that most people should do some type of pro bono voluntary work to help the less fortunate. My time is up.
You have 30 seconds left.
Oh, okay. All right, so I want you to vote for Alice Wilson for judge. We have very short time here, so I can't get all of my points out that I usually get out. But my website is Alice Wilson for judge. Go to that and send me a message if you want to send me a message. I will be very happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our judicial candidates. We've got a few questions here. they're not addressed to a certain candidate, and I don't want to be picking and choosing, but the first question is, they want to know who makes up the Bar Association. And then I just kind of want to build on that so that maybe you can let everybody know kind of what you're running for and the different levels of judges and things like that. So are you guys okay if we all just kind of talk about it and we just kind of go down the line? So we'll start with David and go down the line, and maybe you can tell us about the Bar Association, and then you can all build on that and let people know kind of what our different levels of the judicial system are.
The Bar Association. So, my personal opinion is very political. It's made up of attorneys who are in DuPage County. And the committee that interviewed us for our judiciary recommendations and ratings, according to their voting records, are primarily Republican, and they've been trying to choose our judges forever. We as Democrats know that the Republicans have tried to trample on us in DuPage County for a long time. All of the Republican candidates, except one, have been highly recommended. The 5 good Democratic candidates who interviewed, out of the 6 of us, 3 of us were knocked down from our previous ratings. There's no reason why any of us should be less qualified than we were a year and 2 years ago. Me personally, I was a score of 83.91 in May of 2018, which was recommended. After this one, I got a score of 79.33, and the cutoff is 80 for recommended. So I was not recommended. And what has happened since then? I've had more court appearances, more trials, more clients, more areas of law practiced, more community service work. There's nothing about me that's less qualified than I was 2 years ago. So maybe I'm a threat, maybe the other 2 that were knocked down from their previous high rating were a threat, but I'm a little bitter with the Bar Association, so I'm going to pass it on.
Okay. Well, tell us how you feel. Yeah.
So I can tell you that I agree with much of what David said. The Bar Association has a judicial committee that rated the candidates. They invited all 6 of us, and 5 of us did participate. And what David said is true. My rating went down. In 2018, I was highly recommended. They did not tell me the score at that time. This time, I was rated 89.92. Those were my points, and they apparently do not round up. Nothing has changed in my circumstances from 2018. I am still the chief of the Workers' Compensation Bureau at the Illinois Attorney General's office, and I still have the same family background. There have been no catastrophes. So nothing has changed other than I'm a Democratic candidate for circuit court judge. Is it related? I don't know. Make your own determinations.
I will try to actually answer the question of what the Bar Association is. It is a not-for-profit organization that is for attorneys who primarily work or live in DuPage, but not necessarily. You can have attorneys who live in Chicago be members of the Bar Association. There's about 2,500 members of the Bar Association. When I first started practicing in Chicago, I was a member of the Chicago Bar Association, and then later on the Illinois State Bar Association. Then when my practice moved to DuPage, I became a member, and I became active because I wanted to participate, and that's the kind of person I am. I don't hide, I don't like stay back in organizations in my community, whether it's legal community, personal community, and I got active, and I eventually became the editor-in-chief of the DuPage County Bar Association Journal, which is a very important role because we put out a magazine, a very substantive journal in which we get credits for. And then I became chair of the civil law section, which deals with the courts as well. So my personal experience, not simply opining about motives and political sort of conspiracy theories, is actually based on experience. I think that members of the Bar Association Most of them that I have worked with personally, that I've done teaching with in terms of continuing legal education courses, are honorable people who are very good attorneys, and they really spend a lot of time doing pro bono work and giving back to the community. So that's the Bar Association, and you can just be a member, you have to pay a fee. Now, with respect to the Judicial Evaluation Committee, there are many committees. There's like 30 committees for different areas. For example, I'm the head of civil law. Then you have a Judiciary Committee consisting of 19 members, 4 of whom are past presidents, as well as retired judges. And they change every couple of years. So when David ran in 2018, for example, and he was deemed not recommended, it was a different group of members of the Judiciary Committee, not the same as this recent one, for example. And I have to say that in my personal experience, I think they're very honorable people, they're nonpartisan, and they did a really good job. You know how they determine our scores? We had to fill out a pretty in-depth application, referencing our entire legal history, our legal background, and all the references that we have. And then they call those people up. We have a person assigned, and they call all our references, talk to them, and get background information. They do due diligence. And then finally, they interview us, as Jill mentioned, for about 10 to 15 minutes, and they ask us questions and so forth. And then they ultimately, right then and there, right after our interview is done, they tender their scores by giving ratings of either 1 through 10 for 8 of the different criteria that is selected. Okay? Anyway, that's what the Bar Association is, and that's a little bit about the Judiciary Committee.
So briefly, and I'll break it up like Azam did too, the DuPage Bar Association is the largest county bar association in the United States. It's made up of a lot of people, a lot of attorneys. They actually have non-attorneys too that could be members of the Bar Association. A few years ago, I was the assistant treasurer on the board, so I was very involved in it, and still am. I work on fundraisers and stuff. There are a lot of great attorneys in DuPage. I don't think the endorsement of the bar's judicial committee is going to matter. They believe I should be a judge, but I think people are going to look at my endorsement by DuPage Now, by Personal PAC, by the unions, by the candidates. The Judicial Committee is made up of 12 people, and I think the panel's the same for all of us. The chair of it is a hardcore Republican. On my committee was my Republican opponent, someone on her campaign team was on my committee. My opponent worked for the state's attorney before she became a judge a few months ago. Bob Berlin, the state's attorney, is sitting across from me. There's a state's attorney on my committee. So I don't know whether it could really be fair. I don't know whether you can ever have, 15 people in a political organization being fair. But the Bar Association, most of the attorneys is great. I gave a referral for 2 judges. They said I was incredible according to the judicial evaluation. But I really think you need to look at the core of the person. I don't think you should rely on 15 people, regardless of whether they're attorneys or not. Look what the person did, look what they're doing, and I think that's pretty much it.
Very good.
Okay, let me start out first by saying, candidate Adi said they invited 6 of us, and only 5 responded. I was not invited to participate. They did the exact same thing in 2012. I didn't get notice to participate in the Bar Association ratings. So I just want to let you guys know that first, that had I been invited, I would have appeared there. I believe that my credentials are up to par. I've been a lawyer for 29 years, had a very good practice. I have a very good name. But because they didn't invite me, I don't know if I want to interview with them, because I don't want them messing up my good name like they've tried to do David. I know for myself that David is an excellent attorney. So why would he not be recommended? That's just ridiculous. And I think they need to review that and do it all over again. If I had to pick, I would pick highly recommended for him. That's my rating for him. But I just want to say, what I've heard is, if you're not really overly actively involved with the Bar Association, that is one of the main reasons why they will not recommend you or not give you a favorable rating, if you're not overly actively involved with them. And I have not been that. It sounds like Jeff and Azam and some of the others have, so if they got it highly recommended, it could have been for that reason. But I just want to point out that it's not a fair system because I didn't get notice. That is why I didn't participate. And I am not going to call them on my own. They know I'm running. They see everybody that's listed. So if they still want to interview me, they need to reach out to me. But I'll have to decide if I want to go before them and let them probably mess up my good name that I've had for almost 30 years. That's all I have to say.
Thank you to all of the candidates. That was actually very informative. Our next question is related to ethics, and I think what we'll do this time is I'm just going to go to Jill, and we'll just do the same thing, pass the mic down, and we'll just kind of do a little round robin like that. Are judicial ethics important to you, and can you confirm the law applies to you?
And can we try and keep it to a minute just to
Yes,
keep,
yes, and thank you for that, because otherwise we'll only get 2 questions done.
Yeah, and I will have a job to do.
Just an ethical question.
I think I can answer for everyone. Yes, ethics are important for judicial candidates. No, I'm just kidding. Ethics, I think, are something that every one of us run into. As I said before, I have 16 attorneys that I supervise on a daily basis, and I had a situation a couple of years ago where one of my attorneys came up to me and he said, and he was visibly shaken, he was red-faced and his hands were shaking. I didn't know what was wrong with him. And I said, "What is wrong with you?" And he explained what had happened outside the courtroom, and it was a woman that was wearing a burqa, and this person who is a witness for us routinely made a comment that I'm not going to repeat, but my attorney that works for me, his assessment was that it was sexist and it was racist. And he said, "What do we do?" And I said, "Well, what did you do when you were there?" He said, "Nothing, we ran." And I said, "Okay, well, let's talk about this." So I evaluated what to do, and I thought about some different options between calling a supervisor, calling the chairman of the commission, or calling him directly. And I decided I was going to go directly to the source and explain to him his behavior was poor and bad taste, unprofessional, and we did have future problems with this same witness. So it didn't solve the problem, but at least he knew that I was watching him and I wasn't gonna let this happen under my watch. So yes, ethics is important and it comes up routinely.
Ethics is very important because it governs how we practice as attorneys. So we as attorneys are governed by what's called the rules of professional responsibility. And they're actually very detailed rules of how we conduct ourselves, not only in court, before a judge, with our colleagues, but also how we handle, for example, client funds, what kind of representations we give them, what kind of information we provide to our clients, the level of communication. It's very strict, actually. And in fact, Illinois has one of the very most aggressive registration agencies called the ARDC, which really sanctions attorneys quite a bit, much more than other states. And I can thankfully say that in 20 years of my practice, I've never had a complaint lodged against me as a result of that. So I think that shows you how important I take ethics. And secondly, we had recently, as I mentioned, had the Illinois State Bar Association Judiciary Advisory Poll, and they asked questions about each of our candidates, and particularly in terms of integrity and ethics. And I got over a 90% rating. In fact, I think it was like 93.9 or something like that rating. That's from my colleagues. So I think ethics is important to me, and it's also very important to my colleagues that work with me.
So it's not any different for judges as it is human beings. Ethics is important in anything you do, regardless of running for judges. We do have a set of rules that are unique to us that we need to follow. Ironically, I think all the rules are something we should just follow without being told to. But ethics are critical to civility. I mean, you can't have a good society without good ethics. And once again, and this seems to be a common thread among me, it's the core values. It's whether that person is an ethical person. So, thanks.
Ethics is the basis of being a lawyer. If you're not ethical, you should not be a lawyer. So quite naturally, if you're going to become a judge, which is what a judge derives from being a lawyer, you got to have ethics. You have to have people be able to trust you, that you're going to do the right thing, fair to the people that will appear before you. All of that is included in very good ethics. I've always been taught since I was a kid that your word is your bond. So you have to know how to treat people. You have to know how to carry out in a responsible way as a lawyer and definitely as a judge, because people are depending on you to rule over their life and over their situation. And if you're a bad person that don't have good ethics, then you shouldn't be a judge. I will make a very good judge because I've always had good ethics and a good name. I want to add that.
Thanks.
So we're all up here and out there asking people to vote for us. And we want to be public servants for the almost 1 million people in this great county. And that's an awesome responsibility. And I don't take that lightly. My entire career, I have been ethical. I've always been honest. I've always tried to do the right thing. I've never once got a client review of less than 5 stars. Never once. I take that very seriously. And ethics is everything. Before I decided to run in 2017, the first thing I did was read the Judicial Code of Conduct, and I've followed it ever since. I believe in this position. I believe in ethics. I also know that they're hard and nobody's perfect, so we try our best, and I believe all of us up here are trying our best.
Thank you. Wonderful answers. Thank you. Our next question, can you describe a case you've worked on where the judge handled it in a way that inspired or informed the way you intend to handle your courtroom?
Wow, there's so many examples. It's hard to know. I think one of the reasons I really wanted to be a judge for several years is because I've seen. You want a 1 minute answer, huh? Okay.
Now 45 seconds.
Well, now 30, Jeff. I've seen a lot of bad, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of incompetence on the bench, let's put it that way. And I won't name the counties, but I've seen really incompetence, people, judges who were not prepared, who really didn't even know the law and so forth. And that inspired me to say, you know what, I can do a better job and I can be a judge. But when I started really doing a lot of practice in DuPage, I noticed one judge in particular, Judge Popejoy, who's in the Chancery Division. These are complex litigation cases. And I'll never forget when I came, we appeared for the first time, we had filed what's called motions in the case. And a lot of times what happens is the judge will say, okay, let me review the motion, I'll give you another date and come back. This guy had read all the motions, knew the law, and he was ready to rule right then and there. And I said, wow, this guy was prepared. And I said to myself, that's how I want to be if I ever become a judge. Meaning I want to spend the night before reading the brief, so next day when we appear, before all of the attorneys, they know we're ready to go. And this is not a joke, that we're ready to make rulings on behalf of the clients. Because really quick, what happens is if they don't do that, the cases get delayed and delayed and delayed. More attorney's fees and more frustration for clients. So that's something I would definitely not do.
Thank you.
So it's interesting about Popejoy. So I sued the DuPage State's attorney for violating the law. And it was before Judge Popejoy, and he disagreed, but he had an intellectual argument, and I really liked it. I lost at the trial level, but I'm not one to give up. We won at the appellate court level against the state's attorney, so they don't like me that much. I do think some of the qualities I've seen in judges, and most of them are federal judges, they read everything beforehand. If you file a motion, they may decide upon it before you even get to court, so you don't have to go to court. I think those kind of things, when you focus on the efficiency of the attorneys and the parties, reduce the cost of litigation. That's one of the things I hope to take to the bar, is on simple motions where everyone agrees. No attorneys need to show up. Why waste everyone's time and money? But there's not one particular judge I think has inspired me.
My inspiration comes from an old judge. This is in Cook County, not DuPage County. His name is Judge Cousins. Judge Cousins has since retired from the bench in Cook County, but he was one of the most admirable judges that I had ever appeared before. And I said, in his courtroom one day, I was sitting in there, if I ever become a judge, I want to be like Judge Cousins. He's cordial to all the litigants. He tries to push you along and help you out. Whereas before, I've been before some judges that were just absolutely awful to people, awful to attorneys also, embarrassing attorneys, embarrassing litigants, but Judge Cousins was never like that. So if there was an award in all of Illinois for being the best judge, he would have gotten that award. So I want to be like Judge Cousins when I take the bench. I want people to know that when they come in my courtroom, they will have nothing but my respect for them as litigants.
So being prepared is a great answer, and I definitely agree with that. However, my practice is, I do civil work, but we do a lot of I do a lot of criminal work. And in criminal law, the judge really can't know that much about the case beforehand, because that's the whole point. They have to be unbiased and don't have their mind made up when it comes to trial. So I've been in front of hundreds of judges, and it's too hard to pick just one or two. But I could list out a bunch later if you want to hear their names. But the ones that I find the most inspiring and the best judges are the ones that show everyone in the courtroom respect. And I think that's where Alice was going with it. But the respectful judges, they can still control their courtroom, but they do it with respect. And when they show respect, they get respect back. And that's the kind of judge I want to be.
I would say the judge that I would probably name is Judge Elizabeth Rochford. You may know the name, Tom, because she was when I was in the Court of Claims unit, still at the Attorney General's office. She's now an associate judge up in Lake County. And I was in front of her for 11 years. And one of the cases that stands out is I had a wrongful death case where it was an ISB trooper that in the course of an accident, the doctor that was in the opposing vehicle was killed. And so there was a lot of discovery. We did a lot of depositions of occurrence witnesses as well as expert witnesses. We had traffic reconstructionists, we had economic experts, and at the end of that, we had motions for summary judgment where each party tries to get out of the case. And ultimately, in front of Judge Rochford, we did have a conference where we were trying to settle the case. And she was very, very good at all the qualities that all my colleagues have mentioned. Listening to both sides, being fair about it, explaining from her point of view what she thought was going to happen. And the case did end up settling well below what my opposing counsel wanted, where she'd originally said she wanted $8 million, and we settled for $1.4 million. So it was a loss, but it was actually a big win. So I did appreciate Judge Rochford's guidance in that case.
Thank you. Wonderful answers. Does anybody else have any questions from out in the audience? Oh, there's more here? Oh, thank you. Oh, that's an interesting question. Can I ask all of these? I don't know where this came from, but I think I will. I'm going to start with this one. What experiences prepare you most for being a judge? And I think we're starting with you this time, Jeff.
So I just realized the angle of the camera is really poor on me when I stand this close for those that are watching, sorry. So I, as I mentioned, I was an administrative law judge, and we heard, I heard 10,000 plus cases. I think those are the experiences that will help me on the bench, how to deal with the parties, how to move a case along, and also how to get a decision very quickly. People don't want decisions years later. They want to know right away what's going on with the rest of their life. Also, we do violations for dram shops, liquor places, underage liquor sales in Downers Grove, and those hearings are very critical on whether a company has to close down for a while on violations. So I think those things is what's made me capable of being a judge and practicing for almost 30 years in civil procedures. So, thanks.
Well, for me, one of the reasons that I want to be a judge is because that's always been my dream. Since I was a younger kid, I wanted to be a judge. But I'm going to tell you a story about a man that appeared in my courtroom when I was an administrative law judge, just like Jeff, an administrative law judge. This is a man who obviously had a very serious problem with drinking. He had gotten a ticket for drinking on the public way, and when he appeared in my courtroom on that day, he was drunk that day that he came to court. So obviously this person has a real serious problem with drinking. He got up to come up to the bench, and he fell. They had to help him up in the courtroom to help him get up. And the first thing out of his mouth when he appeared before me, and I'm laughing now, but I couldn't laugh on that day because I was a judge, he said, "You gave me a ticket for drinking on the public way? I don't even drink." Now, if I had not been a very good judge with the right temperament, I would have just laughed my way out of the courtroom, went outside, came back in, and then tried to deliberate because it was so funny. You're drunk in my courtroom now and you're saying you don't drink. So to deal with people like that, you have to have the right temperament as a judge. And I know that I can deal with situations as a judge through my training, all my years of being a lawyer, dealing with clients, and especially dealing with that particular person in my courtroom that day. So I just wanted you to know that.
So I think like anything in life, all your experiences are important. From when you were 10 years old to when you were in law school to your career as an attorney, they're all important. But ultimately, we're trying to be a courtroom judge. So I think the most important experiences are the courtroom experiences. Being in a courtroom every single day and representing clients or representing the state in the courtroom all day long is what's important. Having trials, we're trying to be trial judges. I have 172 trials, 26 jury trials, and well over 1,000 hearings on all different kinds of legal issues. That's what's important. That's what prepares you. The other stuff also prepares you, being a good person, community service, your mistakes in life, your successes. It all prepares you. But ultimately, we have to do the job, and the job is being a trial judge, and so trials are important.
I've been a litigator and a public servant my entire career. I have done hundreds of trials. I've been in criminal court, I've been in civil court. I don't want to say I've been in every courtroom because obviously that's not true, but I have been in traffic court, misdemeanor court, DUI court, where it is routine that, not routine, it does happen fairly often enough that people do show up inebriated still in DUI court. I've been in drug court, felony drug court, I've been in felony court. I've been in the civil courtrooms, I've done employee disciplinary actions, I've done all sorts of different things. And it is true what David says, being in the courtroom is important because you learn to expect the unexpected. I've been sworn at by defendants, I've stood next to defendants that have had feces on their shoes. I have stood next to the defendant who pretended to faint in order to try to get out of her hearing. I have asked one of the witnesses and actually she was the petitioner, if she'd been drinking that morning because I could smell her from 4 feet away. Her response was she'd put rubbing alcohol in her face. And for all of us ladies, we know that's not true. So it is courtroom experience. That is important because it teaches you how to handle the situations that routinely arise, how to expect the unexpected.
I would say there's really 3 important experiences that I've sort of accumulated, I think, which are important for the bench. Number 1, of course, is trial experience and being part of the court system, whether as a law clerk for 2 judges or litigating cases in federal and state court. So I think that's obvious. But I also think 2 other things. Number 1 is the ability to not only know the law and apply the facts, but do so in a way in which you also look at witness testimony. Because judges have tremendous discretion, particularly in the area of divorce and civil areas. And when you have discretion, you have to basically look at witness testimony and see who's credible and who's not. And to do that, you need to know how people are. And I've been a civic and interfaith leader for about 25 years. I worked at a broad sector of our community, different groups, different social economic groups, faith groups, cultural groups, etc. And when you get to know so many different people, you really understand how people tick, how they work, and you understand credibility issues as well. So I think those 3 areas are really essential, vital stats that you need, that you can't just only get from working for, say, the state's attorney's office or the public defender's office. You need a broad range of experiences.
Okay, I've got probably 2 more questions and then 1 question that I think will make for nice closing statements. I'm going to start with this one because this is kind of fun, I hope. What do you expect the Republicans will say about you?
I expect the Republicans are going to say good things about me. In fact, Judge McCluskey, who was at the NAACP forum, I was told that he said, I like Alice. I think she'll make a good judge. So, and he's a Republican, obviously, and he's running on the Republican ticket. I'm not sure which one of you Judge McCluskey is going to be running against, but I think that they will say good things about me. I don't hate Republicans. I just want all Democrats to win. That's what I want. I have no hate for them. They're good people, just like Democrats are good people. And when I become a judge, I don't mind having lunch with them and sitting with them and having coffee with them. Like I said, they're people just like we are.
That is a fun question. I don't know what they'll say. I don't think they can say anything about my career or the way I handle myself in court. They might point to the bar ratings. I guess I'm the puppy. I'm 47. I'm the youngest candidate, but that's not a puppy. I'm 47, right? I'm in my prime. I don't know. I think, like Alice said, I think the other side, at least in my interactions with them, have been very friendly to this point. So hopefully it'll be a friendly competition.
My answer is similar to David's. I don't know what they're going to say. I have friends that are Republicans in Kane County that have wished me nothing but the best. I honestly don't know. I don't have any, I don't know. Sorry.
Can I use the same answer?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a hypothetical, so it's hard to know. I think that they will appreciate the fact that I am highly recommended by the bar, not just in DuPage County, but by many other bar associations, including the Illinois State Bar Association Advisory Poll. But I also think that in my case, and let's not be sort of coy about this, that there is a tendency of issue of bias. And I believe that people of all political persuasions are good people at the base level in their heart. However, I believe that there is bias both within the Democrats and within the Republican Party. And I've been the subject of that during this campaign twice. So the fact that I've been attacked for my faith and I'm not a perfect person, but the fact that a couple of errors have been so heightened by certain Democrats in our community, which has given fodder for people to attack me personally, that hasn't happened by the GOP. It's happened within our party. So before we say all Republicans are this way, I think we all have to look at ourselves and with our own community and to make sure bias doesn't exist. We should not take it for granted that we, whether we're progressive, moderate, or whatever, Democrats don't have bias in our communities. So that's important to remember.
So I think President Trump's going to say he never met me and doesn't know me.
And then there'll be a picture.
We've got lots of them. That being said, I don't think it's fair to create a group of Republicans and what they would say about me. I know there are, I know a lot of Republicans. I know there's some that said on the last election, I'm the only Democrat they voted for. I've got a friend that's a hardcore Republican in Oklahoma who's running the Oklahoma Republicans for Jeff Jacobson. There's one member, he said right now. You know, it doesn't really matter. As long as most of the Democrats come out and vote, they can say whatever they want about me.
I already
Oh.
Just first, so, thank you.
Want to make me do it twice, too?
Okay, one final question, and then we'll have a closing. Oh, we have more questions? Yeah.
There's a few left here.
Oh,
sorry.
okay, goody.
We'll be
I vote to end the questions.
Second.
I'm the judge here. Okay, what are the most important characteristics of a fair judge?
Oh, it's me?
Yeah.
Obviously being fair. You know, listening. I was told at a young age, when I was a young attorney, to listen before acting. And sometimes people just need to tell their story, have their day in court. And I think that's important, and it gives everyone, see, basically judges, circuit court judges are a public trust. You have to have trust in the judicial system. If someone feels that they're in front of a judge that's not listening to them and not being fair and has their mind made up already, then our justice system doesn't work. So in order to be a fair judge, you listen, you weigh the evidence, you listen to the arguments, and you make a decision based in law without bias. That's really the only answer.
David's right. I believe that it is true that judges do need to be good listeners. And I think a good example of this is there are a lot of pro se litigants that come before judges. Pro se, another word you might hear is unrepresented, and they're just representing themselves. And something that I found in my practice, because I handled the pro se litigants in the workers' comp forum, is what these litigants want is somebody that will listen to them. They want to understand that their concerns have been heard. And usually what I do is I give them the opportunity to speak first. And I let them go on and on and on and on. And as soon as they start repeating themselves, that's when I interject. And that's when I say, okay, I've heard what you've had to say, and then we move on from there. And they usually, it seems as if they feel that they've been respected because they've had the opportunity to say what they wanted to say. And so I do believe that listening closely followed by respect are two of the key criteria.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with my colleagues. I think it's really important for judges to have empathy, patience, preparation, and to make sure that look, everyone has biases. Let's not pretend we don't have biases. We have biases that when we see certain people, we act a certain way and so forth. It's inherently part of the human condition. But for a judge in particular, it's important to hold any judgments that we make arise and hold off on them until we finish listening to all the facts, the witnesses, And that's where empathy and patience come in. So I think those are really important things.
So I agree with all that, and just want to add one more thing, I think, is being prepared. When you have a motion, a hearing, if you research the law, there's always changes in the law, and you know what's going on with that respect. That helps out. I've been before judges in DuPage that don't know the rules of civil procedure. If you don't know the rules, it just drags things out and wastes everyone's time. I mean, obviously listening is key to anything and moving the court along. If any of you have been in court, you know they're usually packed, and it's not easy to listen to one case that someone may want to talk for 8 to 10 hours, and you have a whole bunch of other cases. So it's getting to the point, listening to the people about the point, understanding the law, and applying it appropriately.
Fair. Being fair is so important, not only when you're a judge, but for anyone in life. Basically, a fair person is a kind person, because that person knows how to treat other people, know how to respect the feelings and the concerns of other people. I was always taught from the time I was a little girl, you need to be fair to other people. You need to know how to talk to other people. You don't need to disrespect your elders. I grew up down south, and that was very, very important as a part of my culture, in being fair and being respectful to people that were my elders. So if you can't be fair on the bench, you don't need to be on the bench. So please, I would ask anyone of my colleagues that are sitting up here, when you become a judge, know how to treat attorneys especially. Because I've been before some judges where I wanted to cry because they were so mean and they were so horrible. So imagine how just a regular litigant like yourself coming in and standing before that judge feels. So being fair to people is very important.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, this is a good question because this kind of gets things a little bit more specific to where we are. In the big picture, what are the biggest challenges to DuPage County court system, or that the DuPage County court system will face, and how do we deal with them?
Biggest challenges. I would say that the biggest challenge is probably related to diversity in the courtroom. We've talked at length before about how of the 46 judges, only 11 are women. Of the 46 judges, only 1 is a Democrat. And we've all heard Peggy say that we want to keep Linda company because Linda's lonely. And I think that the fact that everything appears to be so Republican-led and it isn't reflective of our democratic values, I think is likely the biggest problem. And hopefully the 4 of us can take care of that problem come December 3rd when we're sworn in.
I again agree with Jill. I think it's really important that as Democrats, we demonstrate the values that really distinguish us from the Republicans, which is we believe in inclusiveness and diversity. And unfortunately, in DuPage, at the judicial level, that's sorely lacking. 30% of DuPage is minority or persons of color, and we only have 2 out of 46 judges of color on the bench. And that's so woefully inadequate vis-a-vis the fact that Cook County is so much more diverse in general. Secondly, though, on the civil side, I believe that we still have too many cases that take too long to finish up, particularly in domestic relations and divorce. And that just adds more fees and just burdens people's mental stress levels in insurmountable ways. On the criminal justice side, I believe that the issue of bail reform is going to be an ongoing concern, and that's something that we're talking about. I know that the Supreme Court has a commission that should be coming out with a report on that. So that's going to be something that we'll be watching out, and that's something I think is important. There's no reason to incarcerate people for small petty crimes that are nonviolent in nature, and to keep them locked up even if ultimately they decide that they're not guilty of crimes. So I think those are the 3 challenges that we have.
So I was thinking, I don't know how many of you have heard my discussion on that there's 15 judges, circuit court judges that we're running for, that decides who the remaining 35-some associate judges are in DuPage County. If we get 4 Democrats in, the biggest problem for the courthouse is what to do with 32 unemployed judges that we will be replacing with those that have really good core values. There's a lot of issues with the court system. We've been asked a lot about diversity in the courthouse, and as I pointed out, and I thought about this, we really don't care if 44 judges look like us and we're before the one judge that doesn't look like us. That doesn't help the diversity for our case. What we want is people that are diversity in their mind, that aren't prejudiced against people. That's what I hope, the 4 Democrats will bring to the bench, that when you go before us, we'll be diverse in our thinking.
Well, everybody's been talking about diversity, and I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more. I think it's well past time for DuPage County to be a lot more diverse. I was told that just recently in 2019, they got the first black male judge in 2019. Well, now it's time for a black female, and I want to be the first one. That's why I'm sitting here before all of you now, hoping that you will vote for me. Diversity is so important. Out of all these years that I've lived in DuPage County, and that's been since 1994, there have been no African Americans on the bench. 2019, from 1994 to 2019 is a lot of years not to have any African Americans on the bench. And I am very happy that they are starting to do that, but it's moving well too slow for me, and I'd like to see the pace picked up. I'd like to be the next one. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to answer what's the biggest problem in the judiciary and in the court system by answering what's the biggest problem in all of America, and that is racism, either implicitly or outright, and the haves and the have-nots. So obviously I agree with my colleagues. Diversity is important. You need to question yourself, meaning when you're making when I'm making a decision on somebody's case, I need to question myself, why am I making that decision? Are there any implicit biases that I'm unaware of? I got to question myself before making that decision. And the have and the have-nots. There's plenty of people that don't have equal access to the courts. There's avenues they can go and they can have. There's remedies for this, but the people who need it aren't aware of it. So we need to educate the community. My time's up, but those 2 things I think are the most important things that need to be fixed and the biggest problems.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent answers. So I have one more question. I thought it was kind of fitting for a closing question, and it'll give everybody a minute, 2 minutes. What do you guys want to do? A minute?
Minute and a half.
Ooh, minute and a half.
Including?
That was very fair.
I like that. I don't have 5 minutes.
So everybody will get a minute and a half to answer. What do you want people to know about you before they vote for you? And I think we're starting with Azam.
I guess.
Are you sure?
I think it was Jeff.
You want me to tell them about you?
Yes.
We could all give each other.
Yeah, why don't you guys take a time to do this? Boy, it's really hard to talk about yourself, even though we've been doing it for 5 months. I think that what's important is that people understand that, obviously, that I'm qualified, that I care about people. I've spent a quarter century, I guess, of my life devoting to trying to bring people together, to work for communities that have been marginalized, whether they're marginalized by the government, whether they're marginalized by systems of power that try to, pull centralized power and impose their will on others. And I think that's really important because as a judge, there's a lot of pressures that we would face from the state's attorney's office or from the defense bar or other kinds of institutions to make decisions. But I think you have to be strong-willed enough to say, no, I will do what is fair in this case. That at the end of the day, when I analyze the facts and the law, that I want to make sure that my result, my decision, is based on justice and principles. So that's what I hope that people understand. If I were to take the bench, that every one of you that come before me would be treated with respect and fairness, and at the end of the day, that even if I make a decision that may be against you, it's not because it's personal, it's because that's what the law and the facts would do, but I would explain it in a way that hopefully you find acceptable based upon the situation. So that's what I think you should know about me. Thank you.
So most of you know a lot about me. I've been involved in the Democrats for a while, and I've been very available. As far as a Democrat, you guys probably know about the famous story with me and Dan Hebriard. I volunteered my time to help him. I do a lot of pro bono work. I enjoy helping people. My hope is I'm the judge that when someone leaves the courtroom, they believe they've had a fair hearing. They got a fair decision. I don't think everyone's going to be happy with my ruling, but I at least want them to appreciate how much I listened and how much I applied the law. I also don't plan, but it's partially up to my wife, to stop at the trial level. There are now openings in the appellate court and the Illinois Supreme Court where we really impact the citizens of Illinois and the United States. I hope to be the best candidate. Look at my website. If you want to, go look at my opponent's website and make a decision.
What do I want you to know about me? Well, when I take the bench as a judge and you come into my courtroom, when you leave, I want you to go home and say, wow, that Judge Wilson was a really nice judge and I loved her courtroom. That's what I want you guys to know about me and to see about me. I have been a lawyer for a very, very long time. And in being a lawyer, I think that you should donate your time to help all people. So what I do is with my church, we set up a legal clinic whereby I bring in other lawyers to work with me. And on certain days out of the year, we give out free legal advice to people who need free legal advice. So we get the word out in the community that we're going to be doing this and they come by. So I want everybody to know that I am a person that really care about other individuals. I have a passion for people. I want everybody to like me. And when you come in my courtroom, I do want you to say, wow, that attorney, that Judge Wilson was a really good judge.
So, like I mentioned before, being a public servant for 1 million people is an awesome responsibility and something that I take very seriously. Besides my resume of being on all different sides of law, practicing multiple different areas of law, I have an extensive trial experience, being in the community, doing public service work, mentoring, pro bono service. Besides all that, at the end of the day, win or lose, I just try to be a good person. And I just care about my family. So at the end of the day, that's really what I want you to know about me. I try to be a good person. I love my family. And win or lose, that's not going to change.
I am a public servant, and I've been a public servant for the last 25 years. And this position would allow me to continue to be a public servant, but to narrow it. So rather than being a public servant for all of the people of the state of Illinois, I would be able to say that I'm a public servant for the 930,000 people that live in DuPage County. And Jeff has actually mentioned this before, and it kind of coattails onto what some of my colleagues have said. any one of us could find ourselves in any one of our DuPage courtrooms. Realistically, one of us is going to be in traffic court within the next year. And don't you want to know that one of us, myself, is going to be ruling over your traffic case with fairness and respect, listening to you, listening to the police officer, and deciding whether or not you actually were speeding. We all find ourselves in these courtrooms in DuPage, and we all want to know that the people, the judges that we're appearing in front of, are treating us with respect and fairness. And I think that I have that to offer. Jill for judge.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll do this good.
Okay, well, that concludes our judges forum. I want to say thank you to all of you. Really excellent responses, really excellent questions from everybody. I'm so impressed. I wish we could vote everybody in. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. And we had a candidate come in late, Kathy Carrier, so we'll give her a few minutes real quick. We're almost done, I swear. We're just about to be done.
You've been sitting here a long time, so I will make it short. I am Kathy Carrier. I'm running for Recorder of Deeds in DuPage County. I am a lifelong resident of the county. And I've been saying, as I talk to people, that this is actually a rather apolitical position in that that position doesn't write any laws, will not vote on any laws, will not adjudicate anything. I am not a judge, or a lawyer, by the way. I'm not running for judge.
And you're not running for judge?
No, I am not running for judge.
You're running for what?
Recorder of Deeds. And Jill, I'll probably be the one in your courtroom with the speeding tickets.
Slow it down.
Yeah, right. And since it is an apolitical position, what you need to look at is what qualities are you going to look for in a person to be in that position? And it's somebody that's going to be able to run the department. It actually is a pretty well-run department as it is. So when I get in, I will be looking at ways that we can maybe tweak things. As I think it was Minnie Pearl used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So there are things that we may not necessarily want to address. We'll find ways to maybe make it a little more user-friendly. It is one of the departments that does make money for the county. So yes, I'll ask for your vote. And thank you for allowing me to come in at the last minute and talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.